Okay, let's unpack this a bit. There's this idea that the only proper response to God in one way is just silence.
Right, complete silence.
But then, on the other hand, God reveals himself in all these different ways. It feels like a paradox, doesn't it?
It really does. And that intriguing thought comes from Ibn Arabi, an incredibly original thinker, you know.
Hmm.
His influence on pre-modern Islamic culture was just massive.
And we're talking centuries ago. He lived from 1165 to 1240, but his ideas, they still seem surprisingly relevant today.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating because he wasn't just repeating what came before. Even compared to someone like Ghazali, a huge figure, Ibn Arabi was a real departure.
How so?
Well, Ghazali, as our sources point out, he was quite cautious. He advised against writing down these very personal, intimate unveilings of divine insight.
Keep it private, basically.
Exactly. But Ibn Arabi, he went the other way. He openly shared his own unveilings, witnessings, and tastings. It's like he gave us a direct look into his own spiritual experiences.
Like publishing the secret recipe versus keeping it locked up.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Now, you hear Ibn Arabi, and maybe you're thinking, okay, this sounds deep, maybe complicated.
Mhm.
And honestly, some of his writing can be dense, no question. But that's really what this deep dive is all about. We want to pull out the key insights from all these sources you've got, make them accessible.
Yeah. Find those aha moments.
Exactly, without drowning you in jargon.
Right.
Give you the core stuff, the really impactful ideas.
And the bigger picture, really, is exploring how Ibn Arabi understood, well, everything. The relationship between God and us, what knowledge even is, this deep idea of spiritual realization.
It covers a lot of ground.
Oh, yeah. Our sources show his writings touch on, I mean, you name it.
Mm.
Love, cosmology, imagination, this concept of Kayal, divine mercy. It's like this grand spiritual framework.
Okay, so let's dive in. First off, just how unique was he? So he was a departure.
He really was. Our sources really stress this. He was a radical break. Where Ghazali hesitated to write down direct mystical experience, Ibn Arabi shared his. It wasn't abstract theory, it was personal unveiling.
Moving from the private to the public, in a way.
Precisely.
And this wasn't just for, like, academics. It reached further.
That's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. His ideas really seeped into the wider culture, mainly through the Sufi orders.
Ah,
These orders were hugely influential in communities all over the Islamic world, and they saw Ibn Arabi as like a spiritual and intellectual ancestor. Even if the average member wasn't reading his Futuhat cover to cover, their teachers often spoke a language shaped by him.
like a spiritual grandfather figure.
Exactly. His influence was pervasive, even indirectly.
Can we get a quick bio, put a face to the name?
Sure. Born 1165, Murcia, modern Spain, moved to Seville. His dad was in government service, so Ibn Arabi grew up in courtly life, had military training, worked as a secretary, married a woman, Mariam, from a prominent family.
So not a hermit.
Not at all. Engaged with the world. He got this title, Mushiaddin, the revivifier of the religion. Tells you something better to impact.
That prolific doesn't quite cover it, does it?
Huh? No. Estimates are around 700 authentic works. Over 400 still exist today.
Wow.
Yeah, everything from short pieces to massive books. He even started a huge Quran commentary, never finished it. His most famous are probably Fusus al-Hikam, the Ringstones of the Wisdoms, looking at 27 prophets, and the massive Futuhat al-Makkiyah, the Meccan Revelations.
And the sources we're using today, they were originally talks for non-specialists.
That's right. Which is helpful for us, makes these complex ideas maybe a bit more accessible from the get-go.
Okay, so this title he's often given. The Seal of Mohammedan Sanctity. What's that all about? Sounds significant.
It is significant.
Yep.
It echoes the Quran, calling Muhammad the seal of the prophets. It means two things, basically. Muhammad was the last prophet, and the Quran kind of sums up all the divine knowledge from previous prophets.
The final messenger, the complete message.
Pretty much. So when Ibn Arabi is called the seal of Mohammedan sanctity.
It doesn't mean he thought he was the last friend of God, right? That would be bold.
Exactly right. It's not about being the last one. It means, in his view, that nobody after him except Jesus, interestingly, would inherit the absolute totality of the prophetic works, the spiritual states, the knowledge that Muhammad himself realized.
Ah, okay. It's about the completeness of the inheritance.
Precisely. Thing of the Mohammedan reality, or Logos Ibn Arabi, believed Muhammad embodied that fully.
So others can still inherit aspects, just not the whole shebang, like getting part of the estate, not the whole thing.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Later friends God draw from Muhammad's inheritance, but specific parts, not the whole package.
I can see how that might have ruffled some feathers over the years.
Oh, absolutely. Our sources note that. Some definitely saw it as pretentious, arrogant even. It raised eyebrows.
But he's still revered as a greatest master. Why?
Because title aside, the sheer depth and originality of his interpretations are just undeniable. His engagement with Islamic tradition, the Quran, the Hadith, it's incredibly profound and detailed. Subsequent thinkers haven't quite matched it. It's the richness of the ideas that lasts.
Which brings us neatly to the Quran. How did he approach it? Clearly not just as a historical text.
Definitely not. For Ibn Arabi, all his own writings were basically explications of the Quran. He saw it as God's linguistic self-expression.
God speaking.
Yes, and he believed it contained all prophetic knowledge, but synthesized, compact. And crucially, it speaks to both our reason, our aql, and our imagination, khayal.
Head and heart them.
Exactly. You need both. You can't just approach it intellectually. He even said every verse has countless meanings intended by God, accessible through proper recitation. If it feels repetitive, he argued, that's on the reciter, not the text.
Layers upon layers.
Like peeling an onion, always more there.
And imagination, Kyle. It's not just making things up in your head.
Right. That's key. He uses khayal not just for our subjective imagining, but also for the objective reality of images in the world, like reflections in a mirror. They're real, but dependent.
Okay.
So understanding God requires balancing reason, which grasps God's uniqueness, his incomparability, Tandia. He's beyond anything we know.
God is utterly different.
Yes. And balancing that with imagination, which grasps God's closeness, his similarity, Tashbih, how he's present in creation. You need both eyes, he said, reason and imagination. And the heart is where you achieve that balanced vision.
Seeing with both eyes. I like that. So how does this connect to the Mohammedan inheritance and assuming divine traits? Sounds like taking it a step further.
It is. Those who inherit from Muhammad, the true followers, they've realized the essential form they were created in. The core idea is they see things in their true proportions and respond to situations how God would respond, if you see what I mean.
Acting with divine wisdom.
Yes, aligning their actions with that deeper reality.
And he also talks about constant change, right? The universe isn't static for him.
Not at all. This fits with wider Islamic thought, actually. God is one, so he never repeats his creative act. Every single moment is a unique self-disclosure of God to everything and everyone.
Wow. So everything is constantly new.
Constantly renewing, ourselves included. Each moment of awareness is a fresh perception of God manifesting in us and around us. It's a continuous unfolding.
Which links to that paradoxical idea you mentioned, the he not he or God not God view of the Gnostics.
Exactly. The Gnostic, the one with deep insight, sees with those both eyes simultaneously. One eye sees God as totally transcendent, beyond grasp. The other eye sees God in everything, similar, present. So every single thing, especially the human self, is, in a way, both God and not God at the same time.
It's like two sides of the same coin.
Perfect analogy. Inseparable, but distinct. Every breath, every heartbeat is a new expression of that divine presence and absence.
Does this apply to everyone, though, even if we don't consciously realize it?
Ibn Arabi argued yes. We all have a basic knowledge of God within us and in the world, even if we don't label it that way. He famously said something like, everyone knows God, but some know they know, and some don't know they know. Those who don't know they know are still experiencing the world, witnessing reality. They just don't recognize it as the real, as God manifesting. The awareness is already there.
So the spiritual path, Sufism, is about recognizing this and then trying to embody divine qualities, assuming the traits of the names of God.
That's precisely how we framed it. Assuming the characteristics associated with God's most beautiful names is the core of spiritual life.
Like the 99 names we often hear about.
Well, the exact number is debated, but yes, that idea. All creatures manifest these names and attributes.
Yeah.
If God is the compassionate, then striving to be compassionate reflects that divine quality.
And love is central here, too.
Hugely central. The Quran and Hadith speak of God as the lover. And the qualities God loves being repentant, pure, patient, virtuous hill, they become a roadmap for us. He often quotes that famous Hadith of the hidden treasure. God loved to be known, so he created creation. Love is fundamental to existence itself and to our ability to recognize God.
So all love points back to God.
Ultimately, yes. He stressed directing our love towards God's all-encompassing name, Allah. All other loves, in his view, originate from and return to divine love. He also differentiated believers, those who know by hearing about God, from those with tasting, direct, unmediated experience.
Reading the recipe versus tasting the dish.
Exactly. Experiential knowledge.
Okay, this idea of love having divine roots feels really important. It's not just emotion.
No, it's fundamental. In his Futu Hat, he points out that love, unlike many other divine attributes mentioned in the Quran, is specifically linked to humanity. He connects it directly to wujud.
Wujud existence, being.
Yes, think of it as the fundamental reality, the ground of being. And for Ibn Najib, wujud essentially is God. So love has its roots in God's very being. Experiencing love gives us a taste of the divine.
And like wujud, it can't really be defined, only experienced.
Exactly. It's a knowledge of tasting. You have to feel it, experience it, to truly grasp it.
But what about this idea that the object of love is non-existent? How does that work? If God is wujud, what's non-existent?
Right, that sounds odd, I know. It ties into his strict understanding of Tawhid, God's absolute oneness. If God alone is real wujud, then everything else, everything created, is, in comparison, atom non-existence in itself.
So created things don't have true existence on their own.
In themselves, no. Their existence is borrowed, derived from God's wujud. So even God's love, from the perspective of his absolute unity, is directed towards what is in itself non-existent. It highlights our utter dependence.
That's a lot to chew on. What about these fixed entities, the Ayan Thabita? Are they related to this?
Yes, directly. The fixed entities are the eternal possibilities, the essences of things as known by God in his knowledge. They haven't been brought into manifest existence, yet they're non-existent in that sense.
Like blueprints.
Kind of like blueprints, yes. Then God bestows his wujud upon them, bringing them into actuality as existent entities, ayan mawjuda. But crucially, they don't possess existence themselves. It always belongs to God. We're like reflections, totally dependent on the light source.
So love, then, is the quality of wujud, of God, reaching out to make these possibilities real.
That's a beautiful way to put it. He links wujud to the names beautiful and light. Light naturally manifests itself and makes other things visible. Wujud is like that light, and the fixed entities are like darkness. Love is the inherent tendency of wujud, beauty, light, to illuminate the darkness, to make the non-manifest manifest.
Creation is an act of love and generosity.
Precisely. God bestows his own reality, wujud, upon the entities. It's a fundamentally loving, generous act.
And our human love, is it a reflection of this?
Yes. As beings who manifest wujud comprehensively, we also have love. But the object of our love, like all created things, is still ultimately non-existent relative to God's absolute reality.
So the God we love isn't God's unknowable essence.
Right. It's the God of belief, Ilah Mutaqad. God as he reveals himself to us. And interestingly, Ibn Arabi says true lovers don't seek God himself, but their own felicity.
Their own happiness.
Yes, the joy of consciously participating in the universe's constant becoming, its renewal. In a sense, they love God for their own sake, for the fulfillment it brings. It's finding joy in that divine dance.
You also mentioned poverty, faq, and remembrance, dhikr. How do they fit in?
Faq, poverty, is our inherent neediness before God, who is Al-Ghani, the rich, the self-sufficient. It reflects our contingency we don't have to exist. True lovers recognize this dependence and love God alone, without conditions. And the Kirk remembrance is the practice of keeping that awareness alive, keeping God in mind always. It's consciously living out that connection and dependence.
Okay. And this cosmology of remembrance involves 3 books. Sounds like guidance is all around us.
It is, according to him. God reveals himself through 3 interconnected books: the universe, the human self, and scripture like the Quran. All are filled with God's signs, ayat, that we need to learn to read.
And our own soul is one of those books.
A crucial one. Our own inner understanding is a vital text to decipher. It's like we have a library within us and all around us.
And the breath of the All-Merciful. That's the substance these books are written on.
That's the image he uses, yeah. Borrowing from a hadith, he sees this divine breath as the underlying stuff of reality, the page God writes on. Divine speech creates traces in this breath, and creatures are like the words God speaks.
The universe as a divine sentence.
Something like that. It's a powerful image.
And this links to the knowledge of the names. Everything reflects God's attributes.
Exactly. Creatures are traces of God's names, which are rooted in his essence. Since the traces are infinitely diverse, the names are infinite too.
But humans can potentially know all the names.
That's the unique potential he saw in humans, linked to being created in his own form. This capacity makes remembrance possible. We recognize the names in creation and in ourselves.
This gives us all comprehensiveness, Jamia. making us microcosms.
Yes, Gemia is that potential to grasp all the names, making humans an epitome of creation. Adam, he says, was taught the meaning of God through direct tasting, not just concepts.
Which leads to the perfect man.
Right. The perfect man, or woman of course, is the one who realizes this potential, achieves true knowledge by following the prophets, embodying all the divine names, not all at once, but like a symphony expressing the full range. This contrasts with the animal man focused only on lower aspects.
Like embodying the whole orchestra's harmony.
That's a good way to think of it.
And the heart is the venue for this symphony, the house of God.
Yes. The heart isn't just physical, it's the spiritual center capable of encompassing the divine. Knowing God involves recognizing his self-disclosures within that inner space.
So what's the ultimate goal of all this knowledge and remembrance? According to Ibn Arabi, what's the point?
The main goal is to awaken that deep, intuitive awareness of Tawhid, God's oneness, and to guide us towards real worship and servanthood. Knowledge isn't just for knowing stuff, it's the means to that end.
It has a purpose.
Definitely. He believed true knowledge originates with God. Real wujud is the true knower. For us, knowing is about remembering those names taught to Adam, recognizing our connection.
You mentioned 4 pillars of divinity: living, knowing, desiring, powerful. How do they fit in?
He saw these as fundamental divine attributes, like the main supports holding up the cosmos. They aren't just abstract ideas, they actively shape reality, including us. They're foundational.
And this benefit of knowledge, it's not just book learning.
Not at all. He quotes the prophet seeking refuge from useless knowledge. Knowledge of religious law, Sharia, is useful here for worship, but its real benefit is helping us recognize the divine presence, God's essence, attributes, actions. That's transformative knowledge.
Knowledge that changes who you are.
Exactly. Like Adam knowing all the names, that knowledge was his being.
He also mentions Adam knowing the form of God. What does that mean?
It refers to the divine reality, the meaning that Adam grasped. Adam's knowledge itself was the form of that meaning. But Ibn Arabi always stresses our limits. We can receive direct knowledge from God, but ultimately only God truly knows God. Our knowledge is always partial, a reflection.
So reason alone won't get us there. Can't just think our way to this.
He definitely thought not. Purely rational knowledge is always limited by our created perspective, our own individual makeup. It's like seeing only one tiny part of a huge picture.
Which brings us to following authority versus realization, Tahqiq. What's the difference?
Following authority is like, well, following rules or teachings. It has its place. But Tahqiq, realization, is much deeper. It's knowing things directly, finding their realities within the divine spirit, the universal intellect.
Like reading the map versus visiting the place.
Perfect. It's experiential. True knowledge, for him, requires that personal realization.
So how do you do realization? What does it involve?
It means gaining true knowledge of real wujud by following God's guidance. It leads to actualizing your own being as a form of God, achieving that felicity, becoming the perfect man. It means seeing beyond the limits of any single way of knowing, recognizing the relative truth in all of them without getting stuck in one.
Seeing the whole picture while valuing the parts.
Yeah.
And the word hack is important here. It means more than just truth.
Oh, yes. Haq is rich. It means real, true, but also right, proper, appropriate, just. As a name of God, it's the real, the truth. He contrasts haq, the real, with khalq, creation.
God is clearly real, but creation is ambiguous.
That's his point. Creation hangs between real and unreal. Realization helps us answer, what are we? Why are we here? He argues that because the ultimate haq created us, we are also haqater. We have a real rightful place.
We belong here because a real put us here.
In essence, yes.
And that hadith about giving everything its haq, soul, lord, guest, spouse, it's like a practical guide to realization.
It's a fantastic thumbnail sketch. Give to each that has a haq its haq. Realization means recognizing the reality and rightness of things and acting accordingly, giving them their due. That answers, why are we here? To live in a way that honors the haq of everything.
Living justly, recognizing inherent worth.
Exactly. It's ethical, responsible living.
But there's a responsibility tied to this. We have duties.
Absolutely. Everything is a hack against us, a claim on us. But we can't figure these out alone. We need guidance from the absolute hack, revealed through prophets and scripture. The core command is, give to each that has a hack its hack.
And God's hack comes first.
Always. The rights of the absolute hack override everything else. Ibn Arabi really emphasized this: don't neglect God's hack, the first of which is Tawhid, affirming his oneness. After that comes the hack of your own soul, understanding the reality you reflect. Knowing yourself leads to knowing God.
It's a whole interconnected system.
Very much so. Even understanding time and space has a role, he suggests.
So Ibn Arabi is called a realizer, a muhakkik. It describes his whole approach.
Yes, he and his followers use Tahqiq to define their method. It's about actively seeing how things display God's signs. Understanding a thing's hack involves both its objective reality and our subjective responsibility towards it. Ultimately, knower and known merge in God.
Okay, shifting slightly, you mentioned the soul as an in-betweenness, Banya. Why is that significant?
It highlights the soul's fundamental nature. It's poised between spirit and body, knowledge and ignorance. It means our knowledge is always relative. Only real wujud God is absolute. The self is dynamic, relational, always navigating between things.
So we're never totally fixed, always in process.
Pretty much. The soul is this web of relationships, many beyond what science or pure reason can grasp. It's the ultimate in-between, containing signs of everything within it. Knowing these signs helps us understand ourselves and reality. Even the afterlife, the barzakh, is an in-between state for him.
And imagination, Khayal, fits here too, as the realm of the in-between.
Yes, he uses Khayal broadly for everything other than God, the whole created cosmos. It's like an isthmus, a bridge between pure being and non-being. The cosmos and the soul are mirrors, reflecting the real within this imaginative space. Regaining our original perfection is about remembering who we are within this realm.
So our knowledge is like an image of that realm.
Yeah, an internal image of an external image, yes. But true knowledge goes deeper. It integrates the external object into the soul's own life, finding its reality within our innate, primordial knowing.
But ultimately, everything created is an image. And even God is beyond full comprehension.
Exactly. Everything other than God is an image. And God himself remains ultimately unknowable. The peak of knowledge, he suggests, is bewilderment, Hera, a recognition of the vastness we don't know.
Wow. But we still strive to understand the soul as an image of God.
Yes, to understand the image by understanding the original it reflects. And because all possibilities, all fixed entities are latent within the soul, knowing ourselves is the key to knowing all things. His perspective is universalist, showing many paths back to God.
Self-awareness is the key to awareness of everything.
That's the potential he saw. Imagination is this vast realm, but it both reveals and conceals, which is why we need prophetic guidance.
And death is another transition in this in-between.
A major one. It leads to posthumous becoming. The afterlife is like an inversion of this world. That's why he stresses cultivating good thoughts. Now they shape our form then. The way to a good afterlife is loving the beautiful God and regaining that primordial purity.
He seems quite optimistic about the outcome.
Very. He believed God created the universe for happiness ultimately. Misery is temporary. Even love that seems worldly points back to God, a truth fully realized at death, the meeting with the beloved.
It sounds much more focused on mercy than some other views.
Definitely. He contrasted a hermeneutics of suspicion, focusing on rules and potential punishment, with a hermeneutics of trust in God's overwhelming mercy. Theologians might emphasize wrath, but Ibn Arabi, drawing deeply from the Quran, emphasized mercy. That's why he's called the greatest master, his profound Quranic insights.
He felt his interpretations were inspired.
Divinely inspired, yes, but not exclusively correct. He allowed for other valid views, but his core was trust in mercy.
And that hadith, my mercy takes precedence over my wrath, is key for him.
Absolutely fundamental. He even pictured the divine throne supported by a pillar called the storehouse of mercy. Mercy underpins everything.
So even hell isn't forever, in his view. That seems radical.
It was, and still is for some. But yes, he believed everyone ultimately returns to the All-Merciful. While acknowledging hell in the Quran, he argued its suffering would end because God's mercy embraces everything. It takes precedence.
Wrath is more for this world.
Primarily, yes. In the next, eventually, all obey God, and his pleasure prevails. God's name patient, Saber, suggests his annoyance ends with this world. Mercy ultimately removes wrath.
And he even finds a hint of sweetness in the word for punishment, adhab.
It's fascinating, yeah. He points out a root meaning of adhab as sweet or agreeable. He suggests that even hell's torment eventually transforms, becomes sweet, perhaps simply by its cessation. The pleasure of hell is suffering ending. Wretchedness, for him, comes from fighting God's wisdom.
Wow. Okay, well, this has been an incredibly rich deep dive into Ibn Arabi. We've covered so much: his unique place, his Quranic readings, love rooted in wujud, the cosmology of remembrance, taki or realization, and this powerful thread of overwhelming divine mercy. Definitely some surprising ideas and hopefully some aha moments for you listening.
Absolutely. And maybe something to reflect on. Considering Ibn Arabi's focus on the in-between, that benya, how might that change how you see things? The neat categories we usually put reality into. Maybe it makes you think differently about identity or reason versus intuition, or just how interconnected everything is.
Definitely food for thought. If this has sparked your interest and you want to go deeper, the Ibn Arabi Society is a great place to start, and the readings in your materials offer much more. This is really just scratching the surface of his incredible thought.